Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. An original adaptation written and read for you by Jon Buckeridge. Part 12. Christmas Eve. Gawain rode on for several more weeks. At every opportunity he would stop and ask for signs of the Green Chapel, but everywhere he asked, no sign could be found. After the attack from the troll, he no longer felt safe sleeping out in the forest at night, and he would ride on late into the night until he found an inhabited place to stop. He remembered the story the bishop had told almost a year ago, about the hero who looked into the eyes of darkness and ever after felt the darkness looking back. He wondered if that was him now, afraid of the dark. "It's not the dark that scares you," the voice in his head told him. "It's the monsters that dwell in the dark, that's different." But he wasn't sure that it was. Still he rode on, and now he was constantly checking around him for any signs of the robed and hooded figure who, he suspected, had sent the troll to attack him. "Did they arrange for the beasts of the blight too?" asked the inner voice. He was not sure. He saw no signs of the hooded figure, and yet he saw them everywhere. A distant tree that leaned slightly in the wind, a lone standing stone in the middle of the field. At one point he had come across a whole order of monks travelling on a pilgrimage and had almost had a heart attack. Still, for a time he rode in relative peace, and no creatures, beasts or monsters apprehended him on his journey. He was heading south now, picking his way from place to place in his quest for news. The days were getting shorter, and the roads were becoming harder underfoot. The first snows of the year had blessedly not yet arrived, but the sky was expectant with ominous clouds, and the air had that crisp, clean scent that promised snow was not far off. The days began to blur, and Gawain was not entirely sure how deep into December he had come. Feeling the need to check in with the world and get his bearings, he turned Gringolet towards the first plumes of smoke he saw on the horizon, hoping they would lead to a town or a village. As he crested the next hill, he saw he was in luck. A handsome little town sat nestled on a nearby hill. Urging Gringolet on, he contented himself with thoughts of hot food and a warm bed and possibly even a mug of ale. The cold winds bit deeper as he travelled on, but the promise of the destination kept it from his bones. As he entered the lower boundaries of the town, he saw he was right to have had hope. The whole place was a riot of delicious scents and savours. The street was bustling with people, and there were market stalls lining every avenue, some selling cloth, others selling leather goods, still others selling grain and produce. The only eyes Gawain had, though, were for the food stalls. Vendors hollered into the street, offering hot meat on sticks, pastries, stews, broths, and all manner of delightful delicacies. Tying Gringolet to a nearby post, he hurried into the crowd and poured out far more of his coin than was perhaps prudent. Soon his arms were filled with tasty treats, and suddenly he recalled that he had entirely neglected Gringolet. The horse had earned some handsome rewards for all the work it had done in the last few weeks, and Gawain found a stall selling apples and carrots, both of which Gringolet was rather partial to. "Thank you," he told the girl running the stall as she fetched him some more items. "You've made a faithful horse very happy." He smiled warmly, not the practiced smile for charming ladies, but a true, honest one, like he'd come across in the Wirral, and the girl smiled back. "Well, I hope they find it to their liking," she replied. "Can I interest you in a salt lick as well?" "For me? No," joked Gawain. "I find they dry the mouth out something fierce." The girl laughed at him. "No, silly. For the horse." "Ah," said Gawain, feigning realization. "Now I see. Why not? I'm sure he'd appreciate it." As she bustled through the baskets looking for one, he made idle conversation. "This is a lovely market you have here. Is it like this every week?" "It is a lovely market," agreed the girl, handing over the salt lick she'd just retrieved from the basket, "though it's usually much smaller. This is a special festival market, what with it being Christmas Eve and all." This news took Gawain quite by surprise, and for a moment he was stunned. Christmas Eve! He truly had made his way into the depths of December. "Here now," came the girl's voice, bringing him back to his senses. "Don't you think you can make away without paying for that? My da will have my hide if I let you off." Gawain paid the girl and hurried back to Gringolet. Christmas Eve! He was running out of time. Unfortunately, he could not spend a moment longer in the town than was necessary. He would ask around for signs of the Green Chapel and then be on his way. As he remounted Gringolet and turned about, he saw it. The robed and hooded figure, 50 paces off and staring right at him. As he stared back, the figure inclined their head in a nod. "Hey!" yelled Gawain, turning his horse to face the figure. But even as he did, a small crowd of townsfolk passed in front of them, and they were gone. Gawain felt a chill that was nothing to do with the weather, and he realized he needed to get away from this town, right away. Each sighting of the figure so far had accompanied a vicious attack of some kind, and if that was so, then he did not want any of the townsfolk caught up in that. Pulling on Gringolet's reins, he led the horse away from the town at a trot. After he'd put it a few miles behind him, he pulled Gringolet into a nearby stream, tied his reins to a branch, and stopped to wait. He took some of the apples from the market and set them before Gringolet, who snuffled in gratitude and set to them with a will. Taking some of the food he'd brought himself, he set his weapons by his side and sat to eat, savouring every bite of the delicious delights. If danger was coming, he meant to face it rested and well-fed. As the sun began to drop, the attack arrived. There was very little warning, just a rustle and a whoomp as a heavy shape descended and revealed itself to him. Gawain had never seen one before, but he instantly knew what this was. From ground to shoulder, it was not much bigger than Gringolet, and the length from its front to rear legs was also about the length of a large horse, but that was where the familiarity with creatures he knew ended. Its sinuous tail, at least the length of its body, extended behind it, ridged and barbed along the length, with 2 great spurs thrusting from the end. Closer to Gawain, its neck was also long and lithe, but this was thick and powerful, and it would need to be to support that head. The creature's face, which stood just yards from his own, was a smooth, sloping wedge from ridge to snout. The top of its head was decorated with a crest of spine-like spurs, and ridges of bone ran down its face, clustering around its eyes and onto the wide, flat nose. Those eyes were jet black, like polished coal, and there was no kindness or mercy or joy to be seen in them. It turned its head left and right, rotating it round and about, and those onyx eyes locked onto him. "A dragon," said the voice in Gawain's head. "Of course it's a dragon. Why would it not be a dragon?" For that was undoubtedly what it was. Gawain had heard stories of them, of course. Who hasn't? It was said that Lancelot had faced one on one occasion, but Lancelot was a legendary warrior, and the thing about legendary warriors is it can become hard to tell the legends from the facts. Had he known the story was true, he would have taken notes. He felt strangely numb. He knew he should be terrified, but with the last few months in the saddle, he just felt a weary resignation and acceptance that now he would have to fight a dragon. The dragon sniffed the air and unfurled its wings from its sides, and Gawain was surprised by quite how colourful they were. In pictures, dragons were always red, green or black, but this was something different. It glittered from an opalescent white through a rich cobalt and into a deep viridian. Gawain had expected the wings to be leathery like a bat as it spread them wide, but he saw that they were covered in feathers. Though these did not look like the soft, downy feathers of a bird, these were hard and blade-like and absolutely vicious. They merged seamlessly into the scales of its body, which ran more hues of teal, azure, and violet. The dragon sniffed the air and opened its mouth, rearing its head back and letting out a roaring howl. It must have crossed through pitches Gawain's merely human ears could not hear, for it was quite a while before any sound came forth that he could recognize. Gringolet, though, had no trouble hearing it. His ears span, his eyes rolled, and he reared and bucked in the frantic effort to flee. Seeing Gringolet so distressed, Gawain's numbness deserted him, and he ran towards the tethered horse. With a smooth swipe of his sword, he cut the line that held Gringolet to the tree. "Run! Run!" he yelled, and the horse bolted. If Gawain had to fight a dragon today, then fine, but he saw no reason to put Gringolet in danger as well. The instant he had moved, the dragon's attack began. It swiped towards him with that sinuous neck, snapping jaws at him left and right. Gawain dodged and rolled out of the way of the bites, only to realize too late that they were feints. A claw swiped out at him from a thick, muscled foreleg. Gawain dodged aside by a fraction of an inch only to take the dragon's tail full bore across his chest. Had Gawain not recently been struck by an entire tree hurled by a troll, he would have said this was the most powerful blow he had ever received. As it was, it ranked at a close, horrible second, and had it not been for his armour taking much of the power of the strike, he felt sure it would have stoved in his chest completely. He lurched backwards, winded and gasping, but there was no time to recover. The dragon did not let up. It leapt towards him, high into the air and down, its wings open and its thick rear legs extended like a great bird of prey reaching for its kill. Scrambling to his feet, he tried to set his stance for fighting, but there simply wasn't time. A foreclaw swept at him, then the jaws and the tail and even a wing. The flurry of blows came all at once, and Gawain avoided each one by inches. He wasn't sure, but he had the horrible impression the dragon was playing with him. The way a cat will play with a mouse it knows it can easily dispatch at any moment. Even as that thought dawned on him, though, another flurry of vicious blows flew at Gawain, jaws, wing, claw, wing, tail. Then the fight began in earnest, and here Gawain saw why dragons had won so fierce a reputation. It wasn't just that they were deadly, although they were. It was that the dragon had so many avenues of attack available. The monstrous legs, the deadly jaws, the slicing wings, and the sinuous tail. Whichever angle Gawain approached the dragon from, it was armed and deadly. And it was armoured too. Gawain had abandoned the sword in favour of his axe, thinking the extra power might make an impact. But on the rare occasions Gawain had been able to make an attack, the blade had been turned aside by the scales and feathers alike. Meanwhile, more and more of the dragon's strikes were landing, and though his armour took the worst of the blows, Gawain knew it was only a matter of time before some damage would be done that he could not recover from. He was beginning to suspect that he would not survive this fight. In the end, it was luck that saved him. No warrior's training, no magical weapons, just luck and the timely intervention of a faithful friend. The dragon had flipped him onto his back and had him pinned to the ground with one foreclaw. Gawain was holding his sword like a staff, his axe long since wrenched out of his grip, and was using it to hold back the dragon's head from clamping down those deadly jaws. He pushed and heaved with all his strength, but the dragon had his full weight on him now, and Gawain could hear the screaming of steel as his armour bent and buckled around him. He added his own screams to the sound of the steel, and somewhere in the back of his mind he felt he should be saying some brave and noble final words. That's what knights did with their dying breaths, wasn't it? But he could think of nothing to say, and who was there to hear it anyway? So he screamed his defiance at the beast and waited for the final strike. At that moment, though, the creature was distracted as Gringalet, hearing his master's scream, came charging at the creature, his hooves wheeling in the air before him. The dragon turned a lazy eye upon the horse and sent its tail snaking in his direction. As it did so, the weight was momentarily lifted off Gawain, and he lurched forward, heaving a breath. His grip shifted on the sword, and as the dragon swung its gaze back to face Gawain again, it thrust its jet-black eye directly onto the point of Gawain's sword. Stupid, simple luck. There was a moment of frozen confusion, where neither Gawain nor the dragon seemed fully aware of what had happened, and then Gawain grabbed hold of the dragon's head and thrust the point of his sword deeper into the creature's eye. He knew nothing of dragons, but he was guessing there was a brain back there somewhere, and he intended to find it. Drawing his arm back, he thrust again, and again, and again, each time at a different angle. At every moment he was expecting the dragon to rear back with a deafening cry and wrench the sword from his grasp, but it never came. The dragon never recovered from that first flash of confusion, and without uttering a sound, it slumped slowly to the ground. Some part of Gawain's brain was sure that he should have looked magnanimously at the defeated creature and called him a noble and worthy foe or something like that. He didn't, though. It had been the most terrifying creature Gawain had ever come across, and he was glad it was dead. He lay there, heaving breaths and utterly exhausted, weary to his bones. If a troll came for him now, he was welcome to whatever he found. Gawain knew, in that moment, that he was going to die completely alone and in the middle of a field. He lay his head back, shut his eyes, and knew no more. He was awakened by a snuffling sound as hot breath hit his cheek. For a moment he feared the dragon was not dead after all, but on opening his eyes he saw the faithful face of Gringalet. In a crystallizing moment he realized he was not dead, and the quest would continue. Not entirely sure how he felt about that, he hauled himself to his feet and staggered about looking for his scattered armour and weapons. His helmet was upended on the far side of the field. His axe had wedged itself neatly into a tree, and his sword was back by his side. As he scraped up his shield, he saw the tiny etching of the Virgin Mary that Bishop Badawin had put there, and he paused. Despite his aching exhaustion, he dropped to one knee and offered up a prayer. It was not long, and it was not complicated, but it was honest and genuine. "Please," he prayed, "Father God, if this truly is the path you've put me on, help me find my next step along it." He crossed himself and looked to the stars, hopeful that his prayer would find an answer. Instantly he heard a bell begin tolling, and dragging himself into Gringolet's saddle, he steered sluggishly towards the sound. He followed it through a stand of trees, and there, right before him, stood a huge castle. Gawain looked at the sky again. "Thank you," he said, and Gringolet led him forward. Thank you for listening. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is a Settle Stories commission. Written and read for you by Jon Buckeridge. Story consultant was Miriam Sarin. Music was Tectonic by Saedra, downloaded via Uppbeat. It was a Parable Arts production.